Hey everyone, it's Cody with Chasing Roost here. Today we're tackling a critical piece of maintenance, cleaning your dirt bike air filter. In my time riding and working on bikes and seeing bikes come into the shop, I've seen some nasty, caked up air filters, some that are even falling apart. Maybe it's because it's out of sight, out of mind, or maybe it's because you think it's like your car air filter and it seemingly lasts forever. Dirt bikes, however, ride in dirt. Especially whenever it's dry, dusty conditions, it's gonna get dirty. A dirty air filter gets clogged and chokes up your engine, or worse, if neglected long enough, the foam will rot, it'll tear, dirt will go straight into your motor, and nothing kills your engine faster than dirt getting in your engine. There are lots of different ways to clean your air filters. We might get into those in some other future episodes, but today I'm gonna show you my preferred method, one that works great and helps your filters last longer. Some people think that you need to replace them after every use. If that's you, call me, I'll take your trash. You don't have to replace them that often, but you do, however, need a fresh, clean, oiled air filter almost every ride. Unless that ride was pretty dust-free, then you may be good to go. Most dirt bikes use a foam air filter because they breathe really well and they're serviceable. However, they do need an oil to catch the dirt. So you need some kind of solvent that can clean that out. There's a fair amount of options that exist, whether we're talking about solvents for like parts cleaners, gasoline is pretty common for people to use on their filters. They work, in most cases, pretty well. The issue with that is they tend to break down the foam a lot quicker and they're hard on your hands. And if it matters to you, they usually kind of smell up the house, which I don't mind the smell, but the other people that live in my house do. If you do use gasoline or some of those other harsher solvents, one of the things that can make your foam filter last a lot longer is if you use some dish soap and some water to rinse out those solvents. Makes the foam last longer. My preferred method is F3 foam filter cleaner. It comes from WR Performance Products, and I'm not sponsored by these guys, but if you're watching, hit me up. I'd love to be. But this stuff is awesome for the foam air filters. It gets just about every kind of oil that I've tried in these foam filters. It gets them clean. It doesn't take much effort to do it. And the stuff's biodegradable. You can use it in your kitchen sink, as I've done so far. Haven't had any complaints about that from the family. But it works really well, really quickly, and I'm gonna show you that process. Pour some F3 directly onto the dry, dirty filter. Don't add water yet. It doesn't take much. Work the cleaner into the filter thoroughly. You'll notice the dirt and the oil starting to work loose. Once the filter is saturated with the F3 cleaner, then you can rinse it with water, rinsing from the inside out. You'll see the oil and dirt melt away is really effective. One heads up, water activates the cleaner, so it doesn't work as well if you add cleaner after you've already rinsed it. Make sure you get enough on it the first time, but trust me, it's easy to get right. You can do a final rinse with dish soap if that makes you feel better. I admit sometimes I do, but I can hardly tell a difference because F3 works so good. Now gently squeeze out the excess water. Don't wring it out like a towel. You'll tear the foam or damage the glued seams. Set it somewhere clean to air dry completely. If you're in a little bit of a hurry, you can put a fan on it to help speed things up. I don't recommend using compressed air to dry it because the high pressure can damage the foam. Just to be on the safe side, you do want to hide the evidence. Rinse out the sink. There's always going to be a little dirt in there. You want to hide the evidence and do this when wifey's not home. So we'll take this back out to our domain, which is the garage. And wouldn't you know it, I've got one that's dry and ready to oil. Kind of like we planned this out. You will want some gloves. You've been warned. There's quite a few different kinds of oils out there for your foam air filters. I like the Maxima FFT. It's real thick, it's really tacky whenever it does kind of set up. It does a really great job of stopping the dirt. I know there's some other stuff out there. I wouldn't recommend just using used motor oil or things like that. Probably not gonna have great luck with that with your air filters. And it's also not designed to do that, so it's not very sticky. It does attract dirt, but probably not as good as this stuff. So a couple things that you can do, just a little quick tips here. You can take, and I've actually opened up a bigger hole in this one, but instead of taking the whole foil off, poke a few small holes in there instead. Another thing that you can do that I've started doing recently, put them in a bottle with a pop top on them instead. So this particular one is more medical use, but I've also seen people do this with water bottles like we would use for a bicycle. But since the top pops open, it makes it really easy to control how much comes out of here. I'm just gonna go around this filter and liberally put oil on it. We can come back in if we miss some spots, but pretty generous inside, outside. And then we can just squeeze this and try to redistribute some of this oil. A really dry air filter will definitely soak up a lot of this oil, so it may not go as far as you think it does. But see how we're kind of spotted in here, got some stripes going on. We don't want that. We want this to be all the same color. So anywhere that it's a little bit light, we need to add a little bit more oil to. We do not want dry spots. If you do get too much oil in there, it's not the end of the world. What's gonna happen is it's just gonna drain out of the air box, onto the swing arm, onto the ground. Probably also ought to note that a freshly oiled air filter typically doesn't breathe nearly as good as a air filter that's kind of a little bit of time to, I don't know, maybe set up or cure. I don't know what the right terminology would be there, but an air filter that's been oiled for a little while. Think like waterboarding, trying to breathe through a wet rag. Doesn't work super well, but once it's kind of been out and fully soaked into the filter, then it breathes like it should. And I'm not wringing this out like this, but I am wadding it up and just kind of squeezing it. Point with that being, I don't want to just rip apart the filter. But that's looking really nice. Get that where some light where you can see it. Nicely oiled filter here. Ready to put that on a cage and install that. Something that I like to do is I will, of course, oil the one that's ready to go in the bike. I typically will oil a second one just like it, put another filter cage in it. They're relatively inexpensive. You can pick a filter cage up for usually around 20 bucks or so, and put that one completely ready to go, oiled, everything, in another Ziploc bag, so that way I've got a spare one ready to rock. Whether if I'm at the races and it's really dusty and I need to put one in after practice or between races or something like that, I can do that. Or if I'm just trying to get a quick turnaround time for the next one, I can use that. I will leave the rest of them unoiled, and I'll put them in a plastic container with a lid on them so they don't get dirty in the shop. The reason I don't like to oil all my filters at once is because the oil will usually kind of drain off to one side. And that's just kind of my caution to you on getting pre-oiled air filters. That's great. It does take some of the effort out of it. Just know that if they've been sitting on the shelf for a little while, it may be something that you need to add a little bit more oil to, or work the oil that's in the bag around a little bit and get it to where it needs to be. That's just my opinion. Now, for some of us, this air filter, completely ready to go in, nothing really wrong with that. Some folks like to do an extra step, put a little bit of grease around the lip. This is something that has been done for a really long time. Basically adding a bead of grease around the lip right here to act as a gasket between it and where it seals off on the intake. Not a bad idea. Honestly, I kind of go back and forth. Leave it in the comments what you guys think, where you guys land on that side of the debate. If you are going to do that, my recommendation, instead of adding it onto the filter itself, because sometimes when you put these filters in, it can be a little bit tight, especially if it's a Japanese bike or some of the older bikes where they drop in from the top. It can be quite difficult to get it in there without scraping it across something and losing all that grease by scraping it on some plastic. What you can do instead is put the grease on this piece right here. And I'll show you that right now. A little flux brush, just dab some grease along the edge of here. Makes this process a lot cleaner than just using my fingers. Just add a liberal amount of grease along this edge right here. The reason why some folks don't like adding that grease along there is because it does attract extra dirt. Knock some of that into your intake and don't see it and forget to wipe it out. Then, now that's going into your engine. So, 2 camps on that. I kind of fall on both sides of it. Depends on who I'm trying to impress. Red, this one's for you. That's the way you do it. Now, we simply install our filter and we are good to go. Taking care of your air filter when you're riding dirt bikes, non-negotiable. You gotta stay on top of it. If this has helped, give it a thumbs up. Remember to hit subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. Keep chasing Roost.